Hello everyone, my name is Isaac from the Innovation Consortium, and today I would like to share with you about grinders. I think many of you have heard of a grinder or a grinding machine, but do you know what it is? Here I am to show you what it is and what it does and how to use it. On my table here, I'm having these two components, and these two components, they are the ones we call grinders. Basically, to define what they do, grinders, they are machines, they are workshop machines, which grip or hold a rotating wheel, a rotating abrasive wheel, which helps us to cut different materials or workpieces. To briefly enlighten on the wheels, I've defined an abrasive wheel, but necessarily doesn't have to be an abrasive wheel. It could be a saw, a circular saw, but designed to be adapted to a grinder spindle. So basically, it's a tool or a machine which holds a wheel, a rotating wheel, and that wheel we use it to cut different materials or workpieces. It could be metal, it could be wood, it could be concrete. So it's just the wheel which changes, but the process is the cutting and the grinding. So basically, however much it's called a grinder, but it serves very many purposes, and within those purposes we have the polishing, we have grinding, we have cutting also, we have deburring. So there are very many purposes it serves, however much it's called a grinder. So the name, it's a grinder or a grinding machine, but it serves very many purposes depending on the disc you have attached to it or you have attached to the spindle of the grinder. Briefly, to talk about the safety of a grinder before we operate it, before we know how to operate it, we must know the safety measures accompanied with using a grinder. In our series of a chop saw, it's also an abrasive wheel we adopt to the grinder, so the wheels are more or less the same. So the wheels, they spark the fires, so those fires, we need the safety for the fires, the fire sparks. They are the goggles, hand gloves, it's the overall. Basically, that's it. And maybe also there is another hazard of electric shock in case you're having damaged cables. So before you use a grinder, you should inspect. The guards should be there. Your cable, the power cable, this one, as you can see, it shouldn't have any damages to sort out the electric shock hazard. The guard I've been talking about, it's this one. So the guard should be on the grinder. You should be having a damage-free cable, and you should be having also the safety goggles, the clear goggles, plus also the hand gloves. As you can see, there is also a pair of hand gloves to prevent from burns and electric shocks from the grinder. So briefly, I would like also to explain about the accessories. After knowing the safety precautions, I would like to talk about the accessories of a grinder actually. To start with, I have this component here. This is called a key. And what does the key serve? A key, the purpose of a key is to tighten the locking nut. These are the locking nuts which lock the wheel onto the spindle. So the purpose of the key is to enter through these holes, the holes you're seeing on the locking nut. So as they enter, I lock the grinder. This is the grinder lock you're seeing here. Once I press it in, the spindle will be locked, and as I rotate the key, I'm loosening the lock nut of the spindle or the grinding disc probably. The other accessory, it's the handle, attachable, and you can change it anyway, any side depending on the hand you use. It has three positions, main positions. It has the right hand, it has the left hand provision, the right hand, then the deburring position. Some have another hole right here For this type it doesn't have one, but you will find mostly three, one here, another one here, another one here. So basically the accessory, it's a hand wheel, and the purpose, we tighten it to, depending on the hand you use, we tighten it at the head of the grinder to increase on the grip of the grinder, so that we sort out the vibrations while cutting in a workpiece. So that is the second accessory. This third accessory I'm having here, as you can see, it's a guard. This guard sits exactly in this position of a grinder. What does it guard, if you may ask? When a wheel is cutting, when a cutting wheel is cutting, we normally see those sparks, as you had seen in the series of a chop saw. We normally see those sparks. So once I have a guard, onto the grinder, whenever the wheel is rotating around this place, the sparks will be directed by the guard, and they won't be reaching the operator or anybody operating the grinder. So basically, those are the three accessories we have on a grinder: the handle, the guard, plus the key. If you've come across anybody hammering the lock nut or the locking nut of the wheel, so that's a wrong idea, or it's a wrong process of tightening or loosening the wheel. You're spoiling, once you hammer the lock nut, you're spoiling the bearings inside the headstock of a grinder. You're damaging everything. You can damage even the bevel or the spiral gears inside here, the mitre gears. So hammering is not an option. We always use the spindle key, the guard, and the handle. So never use a grinder without a guard, never use a grinder without a handle, and never use a grinder without a spindle key. So those three are the main accessories of a grinder. We shall talk about the different types of grinders. With me on the table, these ones I had explained earlier on. These ones are called hand grinders. Why hand grinders? They are mobile, and we normally operate them using our hands. You just hold it with the hands and do the cutting process, do the grinding process, you do the polishing process. So these are hand grinders. The other types, we have a needle grinder, we have a pedestal grinder, we have horizontal grinders. So the process is the same. They're having wheels. When you hear of a grinder, it always has a wheel or a disc. They only differentiate in the materials of the disc or the thickness of the disc. Take for instance, for a horizontal grinder or a universal grinder, the wheels are different with these ones of a hand grinder basically. A needle grinder also, the discs are different, but the operation is the same. You're having an abrasive wheel which is rotating to pick material or to cut material. So basically that's it, the different types, but the principle is more or less the same. To talk about also how to use it after knowing the types of discs, now we shall be talking about how to use the grinder itself. As you can see, we are having a hand grinder here. We shall be seeing how to use it basically. A hand grinder, first of all, whenever we are having a workpiece and we are to use a hand grinder, we shall need a vise probably. If the workpiece is big, you need a vise to clamp that workpiece properly and firmly, so as you can perform any operations, be it grinding or smoothing or cutting. So I'll have a vise here to experiment physically, a simple vise, and I'll be having a workpiece. This is a square pipe also. So once I have a square pipe, I'll be gripping it firmly in a vise to sort out the vibration of the workpiece. Then after that, I'll have a cutting disc with me. If we are to talk about how to use a grinder or to physically know how to use a grinder, Most grinders have a safety switch, but for this one we are having a switch only. As you can see, this is the switch. You have a switch, you have a power cable, you place the power cable into a socket, so as you get power into the grinder. Once I switch it on, the speed of the grinder will rotate automatically. Actually, it's only the switch which switches on the speed of the grinder. So thereafter, after knowing the grinder is fully equipped, all the accessories are there, the guards and the hand wheel, the handle, sorry. Then we look for our cutting disc or any disc depending on the operation you're going to do. Now for us, we are going to experiment with cutting. Actually, this is a cutting disc, as you can see. We place the cutting disc, but take caution whenever we are placing the cutting disc on the grinder. There is this step on the bottom wheel actually. So whenever we are placing the wheel onto the grinder, you take note that the hole of the cutting wheel sits properly on the step on the bottom wheel of the spindle of the grinder, as you can see. The step, that very step, is the one which centers the cutting wheel onto the grinder actually. So you should take note of that also. Then after that, you can place the lock nut onto the wheel. But also the lock nut, you should take note, as you can see, there is a stepped side and there is a flat side. The flat side is basically for cutting wheels, and the stepped side is for grinding discs or wheels. Why? The stepped side, the grinding disc is thicker in the size, but for a cutting wheel is smaller in size. The cutting wheel is 2 millimeters and the grinding disc is 6 millimeters. So that's why it's having a step, and this side it has no step. So whenever you're placing or tightening a cutting wheel, you always consider these two faces. This face, a flat face, it's the one we use for tightening the cutting disc probably. As you can see, our disc is already in the center. Remember, we placed it on the other groove on the bottom. So as I rotate, there is no wobbling of the disc. So further on, as we had said earlier on, you press the lock. When it locks, then you place your key into the holes, then you tighten the disc. There you go. After that, the machine for it, it's already set to cut any workpiece you're giving it. We wear our PPE properly. Remember, our workpiece was already firmly held into the vise. Then it's a matter of switching on, but holding it firmly because it vibrates very much. You have to hold it firmly so that it doesn't vibrate and goes away off your hands. You hold it firmly with two hands. You switch it on. When you're ready, you can already cut on the workpiece once it's firmly held in the vise. So basically that's how a grinder works. You should take note how to tighten the wheel onto the grinder, the accessories. The grinder is fully equipped with all the accessories. Your workpiece is firmly held in the vise. You're fully equipped with your personal protection equipment, the PPE. Then you're good to go. You're good to go with cutting as long as you hold it firmly, you hold the grinder firmly as you're cutting any workpiece. Basically that's it. I remain Isaac from the Innovation Consortium. Thank you very much.